ever seen any moments like this, you might ask, what's the point of the conductor anyway?
They don't need me. They do perfectly well by themselves. So why is a conductor necessary, after all?
Well, you might be surprised to know that for at least half its life, classical music has never needed a fully fledged conductor. That's only happened in the last 200 years. Indeed, conducting, as a fully fledged profession, is barely 100 years old. To the public, they are the face of classical music, and famous conductors can command huge sums of money for performances and recordings. To musicians, often, they are dictators. Fakers, charlatans who take all the credit whilst producing none of the sound. As a musician's joke goes, what do all great conductors have in common? They're all dead.
On the face of it, it's one of the great fake professions.
So, it's worth asking, conductors, what's the point of them? Well, there's always been a role amongst any large group of musicians for someone to keep time. Traditionally in an orchestra, it's the lead or first violin, using his bow as a marker. Lully is best remembered for using his stick he banged on the ground to keep time for his 18th century French royal dancers. Unfortunately, in a workplace-related incident, his stick banging came to cause his death, after a large overstamping of the stick led to a wound and infection in his foot that eventually killed the composer, an early conductor, a sticky end indeed. Conducting in the Baroque era was often done more safely from behind the harpsichord, playing continuously in accompaniment and known as continuo. By the time of Beethoven, the orchestra had grown too large to be easily conducted from within. With the growth of the orchestra came the role of the conductor.
One of the bar. Used to be anyway.
The Romantic period added heroism to the role, and soon the conductor was the face of the music for the public. Most of the great Romantic composers were actually famous conductors. Wagner, Mendelssohn and Mahler were all arguably at times more famous as conductors than as composers. Methods have changed, however. Mendelssohn, like many conductors of his time, faced the audience when conducting. But Wagner was the composer with the most influence on the profession, encouraging a more expressive style of conducting and believing that a conductor could add colour and interpretation to a composer's original thoughts. The concert hall orchestra had grown, but that really blew up in the mass media during the 20th century. Furtwängler, Toscanini, conductors became big names, often bigger than the composers themselves.
Now you have Karajan's name printed this big, and then Beethoven is printed this big. And of course that's bloody wrong.
And the best conductors cultivated their image or brand assiduously.
Karajan was this sort of a marketing genius.
He was very careful to control all photographs that appeared of him, not just on record covers, but in newspapers as well.
If it was a 50-minute piece, he was on the screen 40 minutes.
It worked. When I was young, I always bought Karajan CDs. I have to say I look back now and ask, are you really conducting properly if you keep your eyes shut all the time? So, we can all diss conductors, and yet they are important creatures in the production of music, and much of their work is done behind the scenes, before performance, working on the score first of all, understanding it, interpreting it, translating it for your concert hall, and then working on it with the orchestra itself in rehearsal.
It's still like that.
Wenn ich will kein Accelerando haben, Sie spielen super schneller. Aber wenn ich will Crescendo haben, es ist immer langsamer und langsamer. Okay, yeah, welcome to my life.
There are just so many ways to approach the performance of a piece of music. A conductor is a really important organiser of all these approaches to give an orchestra an overall and a unified approach. Otherwise, keeping 60 musicians going in the same direction could get a bit like herding cats. Conductors can also be a practical help for performers, for example in the opera Meistersingers, which has a 3-hour wait between separate cymbal clashes. Performers can be quite grateful for the help a conductor can give. My own personal experience at the more amateur end of music making is that conductors are almost universally hard-working and highly knowledgeable, absolutely necessary when dealing with a bunch of musical civilians. Conductors may occasionally overrate their own importance, but they are hugely important and their job is hugely hard. When the conductor Mark Wrigglesworth asked his players what a good conductor needed, he was told, and I quote, Conductors need good baton technique, rehearsal technique, musicianship, good manners, humour, respect, approach to communicate, originality, knowledge of string bowing, perseverance, committed, well-dressed, good ear. You get the idea. Conductors are also, like it or not, of huge importance for the audience of classical music concerts. They may be the storytellers and not the actual writers, but that still means their voice is of huge importance for an audience. They are an important focus for the audience to see and hear both orchestra and music together. For seeing how they point, how they focus the orchestra, the conductor offers a physical portrait of the music for the audience, which means audiences seem to be happy paying for expressive conductors. As Nietzsche said, we listen to music with our muscles. Conductors represent this music for the audience. And how do you know this? Well, in the concerts, they're the only ones that are allowed to dance.
It's so free. It's got to be like one person singing his heart out.